Got it.
Great, so I can't see anything that I was hoping to see
Oh,
I was
okay.
hoping to see a lot of things.
Yeah.
Everything that we have, the plans that are,
Right. Okay.
I
Okay.
guess I can join the meeting on Zoom.
Only to connect to the internet.
But I can't.
Right.
And then you would just see it here instead of that. Pass a note to Becky and ask.
Okay.
her. Thank you.
Okay. Hi, Brad. Oh, yes.
No, I don't mind.
Yeah.
She's in a meeting.
I
Hi,
have her,
everybody. We are having internet connection issues here at town
I
hall.
can
so
text
Give us
her.
1 minute, okay? I don't know if, Portla's here. Hi, Portla. And Matt's here. Oh, I gotta go back. You can do whatever you want. Yeah.
They'll pick up.
Yeah. Yes.
Now to pick up you guys mumbling.
There you go. Thank you. Mumble, mumble, oil and trouble.
I wasn't trying to.
Matt, is Dominic coming? You're muted now.
He is joining us. He should be here any minute.
We're waiting just a few minutes.
Yeah.
We, all of a sudden have lost the password for, Wi-Fi here, so we're gonna try to see if Becky can get it to us.
We can start without Dominic. He can join whenever he's able. If I don't want to hold up the meeting.
Okay. The internet now. Yeah.
Becky is gonna come down.
Oh, now I am. Okay. I wasn't, but now I am. Okay.
I just got a text from Dominic. He's joining now.
Okay. All right. We're, well, we'll go ahead and start. You can take minutes. Right, is that okay? And then we'll see if.
Rita said Becky's coming.
Okay.
She thinks something needs to be.
Okay. Okay.
We have no.
I have internet.
They have
Nobody else
that
can get
machine,
it.
but we cannot, and none of us can get on.
You haven't. What are you on? Which
I'm
network?
on
Town Hall five.
Town Hall 5G.
Okay, so everybody else should, let's give
Yeah, but
everybody else
they
the
need-
password.
We
But I know
the
it.
password.
I know.
Okay.
All right.
Put
You
your
wanna
hand
write it
up.
down? Okay.
Thank you. Sorry about all these.
Why do we need a password? all of a sudden?
Because you're not on the guest, something is not
Where's
working
my
right.
guest?
The guest is not showing up today.
Oh, you know what? You need a new, I bet you need a new thing, like I needed at the library. I bet there was the thing with the antennas.
A new router?
Yes.
No, because it's the same router that you're using.
As my new router?
No, I'm just saying, the same router here does both.
Yes, but the guest network's not coming up, and it was the guest network.
Okay, that worked.
We'll talk about it tomorrow.
That
Thank you.
worked. Thank you.
All right.
Did you get it, Penny?
I will.
I'll put it in the meeting notes.
Is it just town hall that I'm going to, or town hall 5G, or does it?
5G.
5G.
Oh, no.
All right. We're here. Okay, so we're gonna call this meeting to order at 7:06. I do not see any public here.
Oh, there's ton.
Oh, there's ton.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Oh, there were.
Where are they?
Just cover
Yeah,
it
they're
there.
here.
They're here.
They just don't have their videos on.
Got it. Oh, I didn't see. Thank you. Is there anyone from the public who has public comment? Any public comments?
There's a
Amanda?
comment from Amanda.
Yes, I see that now. Amanda?
Hi,
Hi, what would you like to say?
thank you, Elaine. I would like to discuss, my concerns about the costs and the cost estimates associated with this library project. This was discussed by the LBC in February, and I wanted to bring this to you last month, but none of those meetings took place or worked out. So here I am tonight. And as you recall, in February, Matt Odens kind of refreshed the Fennessy report. And he added a bunch of things that had been left out. Outdoor elements, solar PV system, the construction contingency, and escalation costs. So he added basically another $1 million to the $5 million base. So that was $6 million, right? I actually have a little presentation. If I was to email this to you, Elaine, could you forward it to other people or share it? I'd also like it to be listed with the minutes as a document that was discussed during this meeting. Does that work for you or not?
I don't think so, since we don't discuss what public comment is at this meeting, so if you want to email it to me, great, and I'll, I'm echoing somewhere.
Are you on the Zoom?
No, I'm not on the Zoom. Anybody else on the Zoom?
Well, I'm going to email it to you at
Email it to
some
me
point
and-
anyway, so it can be.
Email it to us at another time.
Anyway, I'll just go through it then and email it later. At any rate, the new $6 million base was used by the project manager Neil Joyce to come up with a new estimate of 8.1 million. And if you took that $6 million and applied the 40% soft costs and the 5% construction contingency that the trustees came up with.
Can you have your volume on?
Are you guys hearing me okay?
You're on twice, Marianne. Yep.
All right, I'm gonna. How are you on?
I just logged out.
Okay, that was you. Okay,
Okay.
all right.
All right, sorry, we're having a little technical difficulty here. You can email that to me, and I know what you're talking about, but remember that we have not gone ahead with any new costs, and if we
Okay,
did-
I'm not done, by the way. So let me move on to number 2, which is the biggie. So I was motivated by Mr. Odens to compare the original RLB cost estimate to the new and improved Fennessy report. And basically what I came up with was a bunch of stuff was missing. The solar array, outdoor items, 40% soft cost was nipped down to 30 for some reason for Fennessy, and there was no 5% construction contingency. So adding in all those things, and I'm talking about just what RLB put as a price tag on these, you come up with $7.5 million, not 6.4, which was what we were told as voters. That's what we were told this project was going to cost. And it's never been that low. And I just want to point that out because it was misrepresented. And I really am wondering how that got by everybody. Didn't anybody check these numbers? So in fact, the project cost was always closer to $8 million than to $6. And I'm getting a little concerned that this thing is really getting out of control. So those are my comments. You guys can discuss whatever you want. I'm going to send them to you, and I want these to be attached to the minutes, please. I want to list so that people can find this. They can ask for it as a public document.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Any other public comment? Okay, hearing none, I'm closing public comment.
Excuse me, I don't have a hand raise ability.
I'm sorry, who is this?
Mary Lou Conca, I live on Wendell Road.
Okay, go ahead, Mary Lou.
I just want to say that I appreciate what Ms. Amanda just spoke and that I support her every word. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else have public comment? If you can't raise your hand, please just speak out.
There are 2 more hands raised.
I don't see them. Oh, I see 2 hands. Who are they?
Rob Kibler.
Rob Kibler. Rob, go ahead.
Thank you. It sounds like the entire project is going to cost more than we had been hoping it would or basing our numbers on. Is my understanding correct that the grant we have is a fixed value and not a portion of the total? So whatever increase.
No, that is not correct.
So if our costs increase, the grant will increase
Yes,
proportionately?
yes,
Thank you. I'm very glad to hear that.
you're welcome. Les?
He took his hand down.
Oh, Les, did you take your hand down? There's one more hand up. I guess that's Rob's hand that was up. No more hands up? Any more hands up? Okay, we are.
Yeah.
There's one more hand up. One more hand up. Where is it? Who has their hand up? I don't see a hand. Whoever has their hand, thinks they have their hand up, please speak up. I don't see it.
I see no hands raised on my screen.
Okay, neither do I see that on the big screen. Okay, public comment is over. I'd like to review the minutes from the previous meetings. Let's see, we have the minutes from May 9th. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes, the corrected draft minutes of May 9th?
I'll make a motion to approve the corrected draft minutes.
Do I hear a second? All right, any changes or corrections to those? All right. Antonellis,
Antonellis, aye.
Dalmas,
Alice, aye.
Foster,
Aye.
Poole,
Pool, aye.
Jakes,
Aye.
Moss.
Aye.
Quackenbush.
Aye.
Paleo, aye. Minutes have been approved unanimously. Thank you. Okay, so right now we're going to review the schematic design. I do not think that Matt has a new schematic design for us. We did get, we're reworking this project. And we're reworking it with keeping in mind exactly what Amanda has been talking about, that we do not want to go over our original estimate. And therefore, we're trimming everywhere we can. Would you like to take over, Mary Ann?
Sure. So, at the end of May, or no, the end of April or the very beginning of May, Odin's Ello sent off the pricing set from the schematic design to the cost estimator, and the costs were more than we expected. So and prohibitive. So so Matt and Dominic and Lauren and Andrea and I have been talking about ways to adjust the project to get it closer to what we expected. So Matt has made some recommendations for cost saving measures, and I've made some, recommendations for cost saving measures. And Matt, do you have a list that you can share? Okay, I made you a co-host.
I do.
Okay.
I do. I'm happy to walk everybody through it. And just for my own benefit, I don't know. I mean, we have talked, the design committee has talked, you and I have had conversations. We've had conversations with Elaine and with the MBLC, but I don't know how much the building committee knows of the total picture. Do we need to give people a little bit of an
Yes,
update?
yes, go
Yeah,
ahead.
we haven't
Go
had
ahead and
any-
give the whole picture.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen, which is a summary of both the schematic estimate that we got and the cost reduction strategies that we have. And bear with me, I'm going to try and make this bigger. Can you all see my screen now?
Yes,
Good.
Oh,
Yes, that is-
okay, you can see that?
yes.
Okay. So there are two columns here on the right, the schematic design estimate, which we received on May 17th. And this is on the far right, we have a list of cost reduction options that we developed at the end of May. The total cost of the schematic estimate was 9.77 million. So considerably higher than anybody expected or wanted. I will say that based on conversations we've had, not just with the estimator, but also with Neil, our project manager, as well as other contractors, construction managers, estimators, the general message was, number one, this is a very difficult bidding climate right now. Contractors are busy, and therefore they're not as hungry as they might be at other times. And so what we're seeing is very few bids on the one hand, and the bids that do come in tend to be higher because they can afford to, raise their prices because they don't need the work as much as they might during other times. So it's a little bit of a difficult bidding climate. In addition to that, you're in Shutesbury, which is not close to a major metropolitan area, and that makes it more difficult to attract bidders, and it's a very small project, so there's no economy of scale here. So all of those things kind of converge and create this condition where the cost to do this project on this site, and I should mention, this is a site, it's a big site, it's a site with no municipal utilities. and a lot of wetlands, and those things add up to create some costs that we might not see on another job. So as an example, there's no municipal water, and so we need a sprinkler system for the building that requires underwater storage tanks, which then require a fire pump. The fire pump requires a generator. The generator requires a propane tank. And all of that cost sort of escalates. Whereas if there was municipal water available, none of those costs are in play. Because of the wetlands, we're setting the building quite far back on the site, which means we have a longer driveway. We have longer primary and secondary duct banks for power. We have a longer drainage swale, and we're disturbing a larger area of the site for site clearing, site grading, soil removal, and then replanting. So there are a lot of things that make this project uniquely expensive. And when you look at that cost per square foot, I will say that this is not something that we have seen yet, $1,500 a square foot. So that's enough. Sorry, go ahead.
Penny was asking for the minutes what that was, 1586 square foot.
The class 9.777, that's the ECC, not the GPC, right?
That's the total cost of construction,
Because
including,
that's- yeah,
but not project cost. That does not include any soft costs. That's just construction. So what we did was we went through a pretty aggressive list of cost reduction strategies, knowing that we're at 9.7. We wanted to be down in the 6 neighborhood. That's a pretty significant reduction. $3.7 million, $3.5 million is a lot to try to pull out of a project. And really the only way to do that is to reduce scope. And so we went back and we tried to identify sort of the biggest ticket items that we could come up with, knowing that there may be some others that we haven't included here with some other material substitutions, things that will yield some savings, but not as much. And I don't want to spend a lot of time going through these, but we've divided this into 3 categories. We have architectural cost strategies, we have civil and landscape cost strategies, and we have MEP and fire protection cost strategies. And those right now, based on our recommendations, are totaling about 2.86 million, which gets the project down to 6.9. So it's heading in the right direction. I'll try and summarize these rather than go through them individually, and we can go back to this if you want. But in terms of the architectural savings, really the biggest change that we would recommend is reducing the size of the building to 5,000 square feet from 6,000, so that we are not obligated by code to provide a sprinkler system. So a building in Massachusetts, a building that is 5,000 square feet or less, isn't obligated to have a fire protection system. And I want to clarify, the fire protection system in the eyes of the code is really there it's not to protect the building, it's to protect the inhabitants. And the idea is that the fire protection system runs long enough that it sprays water for a duration that's determined, that is the amount of time it takes for all of the occupants to get out of the building. And the rationale behind the 5,000 square foot threshold is that a building of that size, it's very easy to get people out of a building, especially a 1-story building at grade with multiple exit points. And so there's no concern about eliminating a sprinkler system for a building of that size. We would still have a smoke detection system, but it really becomes more like a big house in effect, in terms of the way it's performing in that kind of event. So reducing the building by 1,000 square feet saves us about $500,000. Eliminating the fire protection system and all of the associated things that go with it is this number here, this 721,000 number. So all told, we are at 1.2 million in savings just for that one item. Now that doesn't that's a big item, and reducing the building to 5,000 square feet means taking a hard look at where we can find efficiencies. We did have a conversation with the MBLC and with Marianne and Elaine and talked about this very issue. And we have, we think, a roadmap for how we can move forward with a program that is slightly reduced in terms of the net program. And I'm going to pull up, let's actually switch gears here for a minute. I'm going to stop sharing this document and I'm going to put up this other one. Can you all see this now?
Yes,
And is it big enough that it's legible?
yes.
Okay.
That's better.
So this is a summary of the building program. The numbers that, or the rooms that are listed as unassigned are rooms that are not what's considered net program. And net program is anything that is related specifically to the sort of mission of the library. So the reading room, staff rooms, study rooms, all of those spaces are part of the net program or net assignable. The net unassigned are things like bathrooms and janitor's closets, electrical rooms, things that support the building but aren't part of the library program. So one thing to mention is that by eliminating the sprinkler system right off the bat, we can eliminate the water pump room, which was about 130 square feet. We can eliminate the ATS room, which is the automatic transfer switch room, which we had for an emergency generator. We don't need the emergency generator for the fire pump anymore. We would still have the ability to have connections for a roll-up generator that would provide temporary power, but it's not a requirement. You don't need it because of an emergency situation. And that we can talk more about that later. So there are a number of rooms that we would eliminate just by virtue of that, the elimination of the sprinkler system. So that's working in our favor in terms of that 1,000 square foot reduction. We think about a third of that is back of house space that we no longer need. So then this exercise, the green highlighted column here is the new proposed net program. So you can see the net change to the right of that. We're talking about a 663 square foot reduction in net program. So going from 4,300 down to 3,600. And the changes are pretty minor. You know, the adult computer area went down by 20 square feet. The adult reading nook went down by 20 square feet. The children's room down by 100, but it was a 900 square foot room to begin with. And the caveat here with the collection, with the children's room, teen room, and adult room is that even though we're reducing the area, we've been told that we need to still accommodate the same amount of seating and the same amount of collection shelving. And so that's sort of the challenge ahead of us, to figure out how to reduce the square footage, but still, you know, get the things in the building that we need, the book collection and furniture for patrons. So we think this is an achievable target. You know, individually, all of these reductions are fairly small. And in some cases, the reduced number is consistent with some kind of early assumptions that Marianne made when she was doing the program. And as that program developed, things grew a little bit. And so generally speaking, I think there was a certain level of comfort with these numbers. And so the plan is to try to, using this reduced number, come up with a revised building plan that meets all of these numbers, still functions the way that it needs to, and does it by, you know, staying under that 5,000 square foot threshold. So if we go back to the list, is this legible to you all?
Yes.
Okay. I wanted to point out a couple of other things. One, some of the bigger items here. So that's the single biggest is the reduction in square footage and the deletion of the sprinkler system. Another one is looking at alternate structural systems. We had our estimator price 2 different systems, and this was working with our structural engineer. One was looking at going from an all heavy timber structure, mass timber structure, to a hybrid structure of steel with wood. So it would be steel columns and beams with wood roof framing and structural wood decking. So you would still expose the underside of the wood roof. You would have some of that, the benefit of the kind of warmth of the wood on the interior, without any need to sort of cover up that structure for aesthetic reasons. And that saved us about $335,000. We also had them look at an all steel structure, and surprisingly, that saved us $318,000, so not quite as much as the hybrid option. So obviously, we can't take both of those. We've chosen the one that saves us more, which is the hybrid wood and steel. And so this one has an N next to it, meaning we did not take it. So this $1,097,000 includes everything in this list except for that third item. Skipping down now to civil and landscape. As I mentioned before, the site work is a pretty big number. One of the things that's driving that, as I said, was how far back the building is from the road. We would like to look at moving the building closer to the road, which means potentially building in the wetland buffer more than we have. We tried to, in the early stages of this, locate the building so that it was fully outside of the 50-foot buffer around the wetlands, and that was both parking and building. And that meant pushing the building back about 350 feet from the site, or from the road, sorry. If we were to move the building 100 feet closer, and by the way, by doing that, it would put the building close to where the garage is now. So it would put the building and the parking into previously developed areas of the site, rather than pushing it back out of the buffer, but into previously undisturbed portions of site. And so we actually think that, in terms of the overall sort of health of the site, that it's a reasonable approach. Obviously, we want to talk through this with Conservation Commission, but by moving the building closer, we know we can save about $140,000 in costs associated with the road and the primary and secondary duct banks and the bioswale along the driveway. What this number doesn't include is the reduced area of site clearing, soil removal, site grading and prep, and planting for whatever proportion of area that we are no longer disturbing. It was a little too difficult for our estimator to quantify without a revised drawing, and so that number isn't in this yet. So that 140,000 stands to go up. We don't know by how much, but we think by not an insignificant number. In addition to that, we think that we can reduce the plantings that were in the schematic design pretty substantially. And so we've targeted about a 50% reduction after reducing the developed site area for the project. So those two things combined are, about half of this total savings here of $715,000. And we're hoping that number goes up by, another $100,000 or more once we get a better handle on potential site cost savings. And then
Brad has his hand up.
Oh, sorry, Brad.
Matt, so if the building, excuse me, moves closer and gets into the buffer, would there be increased costs of, I don't know what the term is, remediating the buffer, adjusting for that encroachment?
I think it's a little too early to say. I think that the cost to do any of that kind of work would be offset by the savings of not clearing, not disturbing and, having to do all of the other things that are required in other parts of the site. So the hope is that even if there are additional costs related to remediation in the wetland, that it's still a net save for the project. That would be the goal. Obviously, this has to be tested out with a new site plan. And actually, I'd like to put the site plan up just so people can see it. And that. Sorry to be toggling between so many drawings here.
You have Meryl unmuted.
So can you guys see this reasonably well?
Yes.
So this is the schematic site plan. This is one of the landscape drawings, their layout plan. You see the building here, toned gray. You see the parking lot just below it on the page, which is east on the site, and the turnaround loop for the fire emergency vehicles. And this driveway. This end of the building is 350 feet back from the edge of Leverett Road. And you can see here, shaded in light gray, the wetlands, that this is the east wetland, or sorry, the western wetland and the eastern wetland here. And then the 50-foot buffer, if you can see my cursor, and then the 100-foot buffer here. The 100-foot buffers overlap, obviously. So the 50-foot buffers, we were kind of threading between those with the driveway. If we move the building closer, if you just take this building and you slide it forward 100 feet, that's going to put us into this area of the buffer. Now, as it moves forward, it's going to have to cheat a little further to the east to find, to kind of get sort of halfway between the two wetlands. So we're sort of managing the amount of space on either side, and we'll have to look at it relative to parking and driveway. But we think that there's a way to slide everything forward and realize some of those savings. As I said, it might mean revising the layout of the parking or the driveway in order to make that work. And it may mean shifting the building a little bit further east to do that. But we think that that's achievable. And so if you look at this dashed line that is running all the way around the disturbed area of this project, you can see that, as this developed area moves further forward, we're shortening that overall limit of work area and reducing the amount of area that we're disturbing. And so there's cost associated with that, obviously.
Holly has her hand up.
If the driveway is shorter, then do we still need to have the turnaround, or does it become short enough that the buyer feels like they don't need it anymore?
I think it's a question for the fire chief. There were two issues. One was backing out, pulling in and backing out. And there are plenty of municipalities that do that. 350 feet is a pretty long way to back up a fire truck, though. But the other issue was having an emergency vehicle parked and having the ability to get another emergency vehicle past it and then exit again. And so we would have to have that conversation with the fire chief to know whether or not we could eliminate the turnaround. I would say we keep it in for now, and if we find that we can revise that, we will.
Matt, have you considered the savings being having the building closer to the septic field? That also would be a cost saving?
There'd be a little bit of savings in piping, but that's probably not a substantial cost. There'd be some cost. I mean, it adds to the overall, and obviously every little bit counts, and so that would go into the positive column of cost savings. So we'll take it. Whether it reduces the pump size. One thing that I can say is that if we're reducing the building by 1,000 square feet, and by the way, we're eliminating a bathroom in doing that, right? We're going from 3 single occupancy bathrooms down to 2 bathrooms. that might reduce the size of the septic leaching field and the size of the pump and the tank. So there are some potential incremental costs there that we might see some savings. Again, that all of that has to get quantified in a real way. We need an updated narrative from our civil engineer that can be priced in order to sort of confirm those savings. But we're, cautiously optimistic that there's some opportunity there. So I'm going to get rid of that and go back to the list. Okay. You see that now?
Yes.
Okay, so that takes us to MEP and FP, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and fire protection. The biggest one I mentioned was the 720,000 savings for the fire protection. We had to put on the list elimination of the PV system on the roof. After conversations prior to this meeting, it was decided that it would be better to leave that in the project for now. The cost of the PV is about 387,000. And the advantage to putting it in now is that the MBLC would cover a significant portion of that if it's roof mounted. But it also means that from day one, you're reducing or eliminating your operating costs because it's producing energy to offset an all-electric building. So that's the benefit of keeping it in the project. And so we do not have it included in our total. The other one I'll mention is along with the $721,000 deletion of the fire protection system, we're also eliminating the generator and the propane tank, which is another $275,000. So really the sort of all-in cost of the fire protection is about $1 million, plus the $500,000 reduction for building size reduction. And so we're looking at about $1.5 million total for that item. So if we total those things up, as I said, right now we're at 2.86, which gets us down to a $6.9 million building. At 5,000 square feet, that's $1,300 a square foot. So it is a reduction. Obviously, the cost per square foot, because the building's smaller, there's a little bit of a trade-off there. But this is about as good as we can get at this stage on paper, just by going through the estimate and working with the estimator to come up with some of these items. Really, all of this has to be sort of proven by new drawings that are then quantified and a new estimate to really confirm that we're realizing these savings, and hopefully ultimately we're doing better than this. What is not on this list, and although we've talked about it, is the elimination of the covered outdoor program space and the outdoor storage, which is also covered. We didn't list it with a separate cost because it was a little bit, it got a little bit tricky with the 5,000 square foot reduction. We didn't want to risk double dipping, reducing certain costs. And so we haven't listed it here, but if that is truly out of the project, then it's very possible that we will see some additional savings from that. Again, there might have been some overlap between it and this item 11 here. And so we didn't list that as a separate cost in this overall matrix. One last thing I'll say, and this is in response to the comment earlier from Miss Alex, the estimate that was done by Fennessy, and she mentioned another estimate, which we've never seen. When we went through the Fennessy estimate and flagged that it was missing certain elements, that it was a year old, and so it needed to be escalated to a later date. And, escalation, as everybody knows, has been exceedingly high over the last couple of years. We're not estimators, so we did not go through that estimate and look at each line item and say, that, that cost per square foot is low for that particular item. That's not our expertise. And so we did not comment on the sort of body of the estimate. We only flagged things that were missing and the fact that it needed to be corrected for escalation to get it aligned with the right calendar. So I'll leave it at that. So I'll stop sharing. Happy to answer any questions.
Who has questions? Go ahead, Penny.
I'd like to hear Lauren's comments about all of this.
Well,
Well, bummer.
Andrea and I had some very serious talks about whether we would allow this reduction in square footage. And we have given the scheme on paper a conditional approval contingent on a floor plan that actually works. So we're reserving our final approval until we get a floor plan that we can look at. I think that a lot of the cost saving measures that Odinzello has proposed make a lot of sense. And I think that as long as we can preserve the functionality of the building, then the MBLC will be fine with it.
Thank you.
Yes, go ahead, Stephen.
Matt, I noticed the square footage savings that you're listing, I think is 633 square feet currently.
That's the net program reduction. Yep.
Okay, program reduction. Now, how much square footage is being saved by not needing the sprinkler system, operating room, and I don't know if there's anything else. I mean, because that's obviously part of the total reduction.
That was about 300 to 350 square feet, somewhere in that range. It was roughly a third of the total target.
So then the 633 and the 300 whatever gets the 1,000.
We think so. Yeah, we think that the 600, somewhere in that range, 600 to 660 net program is about what we need to target. Because remember that, there's, in addition to the spaces that we're eliminating, those back of house rooms, there's also a grossing factor, right? There's some circulation space to get into each of the rooms. There's the wall thicknesses, and that adds a certain amount of square footage, small percentage. But, let's say that's 10% on top of that net number, that's another 60 square feet. And then you do the same thing for the back of house rooms. You take those net areas and you apply the grossing factor to them because you're eliminating the walls between them. And so again, on paper, we think that, a 660 net square foot reduction should get us where we need to be. And that, we have to prove that by actually building drawings and doing area takeoffs of new layouts. And it's always, as you know, it's always very difficult to hit program numbers precisely on the money when you start to fit things together. Some things tend to need to be a little bit bigger or a little bit smaller just to kind of fit together. And so, but we're gonna try to stick to those numbers as best we can. And if anything, err on the side of bigger and hopefully find other efficiencies in the building. We're looking at the schematic design plan and we're trying to find areas that are sort of circulation space that are not net program and they're not back of house rooms. That it's just sort of circulation that's needed to get from one room to the next. And we'll have to figure out how to sort of knead that stuff out of the mix.
Thank you.
Yes, Penny.
I know you're not at this point yet, but, and maybe this was in the information you showed, but it was a lot to try and absorb. is there going to be as much glass on the front? And I ask that because I wonder if a glass facade is more or less expensive than a more traditional facade.
Yeah, it's a good question. And we actually had as one of the line items in our cost strategy, we had a line item that was reduced glazing by some, I can't remember what percentage we used, 15% or something. And had a number for that. We didn't include that in the list that we just shared with you because as we reduce the building size, we are also reducing building glazing. And again, we didn't want to double dip on that number. So I guess the short answer is yes, there is the ability to reduce glazing, and that's something that we will look at. I mentioned earlier that even though we're reducing the adult and children areas square footage, the MBLC and Marianne both feel strongly that we maintain the ability to house the same collection size and the same amount of furniture. So we're going to have to trade off some glazing for wall space for books. And so that's going to reduce the amount of glazing in the building, so that we will be looking at that. It's a little bit difficult to quantify right now.
Thank you.
Yes, Dale.
I'd like to hear what Neil has to say about all of this.
So honestly, my thoughts have pretty much already been stated. I think that the building is going to be driven as it should have been, or as it was from the onset, by the program. The program will drive the building, the creativity of the architects to fit the program in the most compact floor plan as possible is the shortest route to a successful overall project budget that we can get to. The easiest way to eliminate cost is by reducing square footage. And I think that's the mode that we're in. And then there are numerous other finishes and building construction materials, et cetera, that will be fully vetted and evaluated. And if we can find a cheaper mousetrap that meets the aesthetic and budget needs of the town, we will certainly incorporate.
Brad.
I just want to say I'm very impressed with what you've been presenting. This is quite a pivot. I appreciate the pivot to finding ways to reduce expense, and I like what you've described. I say many thanks. Many thanks.
Thanks, Brad.
Any other committee member?
So with these reductions in the ECC, does that get us back to the original total project cost that we started with?
Sorry, Jeff, I didn't hear the first part of that.
So with the reductions that you just showed us in the construction costs, does that get us back to the original total project costs we started with?
It doesn't yet, because the costs that I outlined get the construction cost down to 6.9, again, on paper, and before we've sort of figured out what other opportunities there are for savings. But if the construction cost is 6.9, soft costs, I believe, are 2.2. Is that right, Neil?
Round numbers, yeah. Honestly, I gotta go back and look at them again, but that was the general area, yes.
Then we're still about $600,000 off, right? If my math is right.
Okay.
Yes, Marianne.
So what do you think is the best next step? I'd really like to get working on this new floor plan so that we can get it done and then get cost estimate out. So when we last talked, you talked a little bit about, you were gonna think about a schedule.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about a schedule too. So,
So what are you doing later tonight?
Be first, Marianne.
Okay, so, all right, so you go ahead and tell me what you're thinking about for a schedule, and I think the schedule is gonna involve the subcommittee, right?
Yes.
Okay,
So what I was going to propose is that we plan to meet, I think we had a meeting scheduled for next Wednesday. Is that
we can.
in your
I thought
calendar?
it was tomorrow, okay.
Is next Wednesday good for you too?
Yeah.
Yeah, Jeff, okay, that's good.
So if we meet next Wednesday, I think we can have some preliminary building planning to talk about based on the new numbers. If we then say, we sort of review that, get feedback from you in that meeting, incorporate that feedback over the next 2 weeks, meet again 2 weeks later on a Wednesday. And the date would be the 28th. It's gonna come, the schedule is gonna come down to how quickly we can arrive at a plan that meets the mandate, which is the reduced square footage, and satisfies you and the MBLC that it works properly and that it's giving you everything that you need out of this library. And so, can we get there by the 28th? I certainly hope so, but it's possible that we won't. So we'll just have to see how it goes. But I'm hopeful that, in a kind of ideal scenario, we have one meeting with you, get feedback, have another meeting, with good progress made, and hone in on a kind of preferred solution that we then can bring on our structural engineer, who, by the way, we're already talking with about, different structural options available to us and what's the most cost effective. But get our structural engineer involved. I don't think that there's a whole lot, frankly, for our mechanical, electrical, plumbing, fire protection engineers to do. It's really just deleting things from their narrative. It's not going to change the sort of deliverables that they gave us for schematic design. But it will affect site, civil, and landscape. I think we'll need to do a new site plan and work through that with our civil engineer and our landscape architect. And if we get to a building plan on the 28th that everybody's happy with, it's going to take us, another week, say, to get to a point where we're comfortable with the site plan, and that's optimistic. So hopefully we are talking about getting pricing documents together by, say, July 12th. And I'm hopeful that the estimator can turn this around in less than 2 weeks, because it'll be the second time he's done it. And so there's some efficiency there. He won't have to redo some of his assumptions. So hopefully some of that work will carry over. But if we said a pricing set on, again, this is all contingent on getting a building design that we're happy with on the 28th. But if we were to send out pricing by the 12th, maybe we get something by the end of the following week, the 21st, which would mean that last week of July, we're sort of evaluating where we are.
So when do we go to Concom to ask them? And first of all, I want to ask the committee, are we all, Brad, you're included, are we all comfortable with going to Concom and asking you to move the building 100 feet forward?
Yes.
I think it's better for the site. And better for the library.
I agree.
But,
Why not?
but.
Brad?
I agree.
I saw Miriam was here before.
I'm
Miriam,
still here.
can we-
I'm still here.
Can we meet with the commission within the next few weeks
I
to
can't-
talk about?
I can't hear. Can you repeat that?
And could we meet with the Concom within the next 2 weeks to
Yeah,
discuss this? Cause I know
We're meeting tomorrow and then we're meeting, whatever the 2 weeks is, what is that, the 22nd?
Is there any chance that we could possibly get on your agenda tomorrow as an emergency?
Absolutely.
Unanticipated business.
Unanticipated business.
It certainly is.
Well, if you say yes, then we'll be there.
Okay.
What time would you like
Well,
us there?
we have a meeting with our consultant at 6. And why don't you come at 6? Because how much time do you think you're gonna need?
What do you think, Marion?
Oh, 20 minutes.
20 minutes
We're not gonna
at
have a
most.
presentation.
We're just gonna be asking you for this
Okay,
and
why don't
figuring out.
you come at 6 and I'll tell our consultant to come a little later.
Okay. All right, so
Thank you.
thank you very much.
We'll see you tomorrow.
Is it just
Yeah,
gonna be
nothing.
you guys or is Neil?
It won't
or-
be the full committee. It won't be the full committee because we haven't posted a meeting, so.
Right.
Yeah, I
So-
think
so
it'll
we'll-
be helpful to us to see some sort of schematic, just to have a way to visualize this, because we're,
We won't have that.
We won't
Or-
have that,
okay.
and if we want to have that, and if we want to have our civil engineer and landscape architect participate in that conversation, it makes sense to push it out a little further, so maybe the week that next meeting. I mean, I think having an initial conversation tomorrow is fine. But I would say we plan to follow up on the next meeting, which I think is the 21st, if it's 2 weeks after.
The 22nd.
22nd.
The 22nd. You have a meeting scheduled for the 21st, but that's the public hearing for the wetland protection bylaw.
yes,
don't-
and we're meeting on the 22nd. We have one public hearing already scheduled. I have to look at what our schedule is.
It's on the 21st, the
No,
public hearing.
No, on the 22nd, we have a public hearing for a project. We're meeting twice that week. I
It
just
says
have,
It's a different public hearing.
it's a different public hearing that the wetland protection bylaw.
yeah, that's on Wednesday.
Right,
Wednesday. On Thursday, we're meeting twice that week. We have a public hearing, so I just don't have a time. I can get back to you.
okay,
Look at what time we've scheduled that public hearing.
okay, so should we go tomorrow night?
No, I think we wait until.
We'll
we
wait
have
till the
something to show you.
22nd. We'll wait
Okay.
till the 22nd, okay?
Okay,
Thank
great.
you for being flexible.
No problem.
Yeah, great. Brad, you have your hand up.
This is just calendars. When you were talking about Wednesday meetings, I assume you mean the small group, the building committee, not the all of us here now. Is that correct?
That's right.
Committee.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's still at noon. At noon.
Yes, at noon. Lauren has her hand up, so I just.
Yes, I know.
Want to check her schedule
Lauren,
before we say that we're gonna meet time.
Yes, thank you. I too had the design subcommittee meeting scheduled for this week, not next week. Next Wednesday, I have meetings until 11:30 and again at 1 o'clock that I cannot reschedule. So if we could shift the meeting a half an hour earlier and make it 11:30 to 1. That would be helpful for me. And then if you go longer, I'll just have to leave at 1 o'clock. Is that possible?
That's fine.
That
with me.
works for me.
okay,
And what is the
Okay.
date for that?
Next Wednesday, 14.
the 14th.
Okay, then I have a question, Matt. Is there any way we could meet next week? And then you guys could just do nothing but work on our project and we can meet the following Wednesday? Can we meet once a week?
Can we meet once a week? Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Yeah,
As in you and us? Like
With
a
the-
sort of,
Committee and you guys, and that work that you would have done in 2 weeks, you do in 1 week. I told you I've been thinking about this, Matt.
Uh-huh.
Human cloning.
They're all smiling.
I don't see
We're
Dominic
smiling at the absurdity.
Yeah.
I mean, we do need time for things to develop. We can meet every week, but I don't know that it's gonna get done any sooner.
He needs time.
They need thinking time.
They need
Yeah.
thinking time. Okay, Jeff says you need thinking time,
And I agree.
and Stephen agrees. So, you will
Mary Ann,
have a nice.
I'm happy to check in with you every week, though.
Well, it's only, no, it's okay. You don't have to check in with me every week. I want to, like, if there was a way to sort of fast track things and to keep it moving, but if you need thinking time, then you need thinking time, and that's fine. So then we would meet on the 28th. That would be the second time. I just have to check, the time difference between here and where I will be. So I can never remember. Is it 2 hours ahead or 2 hours behind? Like, if it's 12 o'clock here, what time is it?
10 o'clock there.
10 o'clock, so it's fine, okay. All right, so I can never remember, okay.
And all my family's in the Pacific time zone. so I
Right,
know
yes,
it's very-
yes, okay, good, all right. So, that's fine, I can do the 28th at noon. Or 11:30.
And Lauren, does that day and time work for you?
Yes, that's fine for me.
Great.
And does noon work for you that day, Laura?
Yes, yes.
And is that okay with everybody else?
On the 28th, Stephen's not gonna be
Well,
here.
I mean, I,
Where will you
candidate, well,
be? Oh,
hopefully candidate, given the fires up. We
Yeah,
may,
which part? Which part of Canada?
well, Nova Scotia, Quebec, Montreal, where all the fires are. I'll
would
make
you be
some-
willing to, you'll make it work? Okay, all right, thank you. Okay,
So then our committee is not gonna meet, the full committee won't meet until after the design committee has
had a couple of goes at
a
it.
couple of goes at it.
Okay, and then, so the 28th, and then the following Tuesday
Is the
might be July 4th.
the 5th.
Is it the 5th?
It's,
Is
no,
it
the
the
following
4th?
Tuesday is the 4th. I'm actually out that whole week.
Yeah, okay,
Okay.
so it will end up being the 11th.
Okay, does the 11th work for everybody?
Yep.
At 7 p.m.? Okay,
So you're saying that's the next time all of us are gonna meet?
yeah.
Yep,
Okay. That's a long time from now.
that is a long time from
I
now.
might have to crash some of your other meetings.
Yes, you can come to the subcommittee meeting.
I cannot join you on the 11th. I'll be in Pennsylvania.
Okay,
I'll go back. And that's the 7th.
yeah.
Okay, July 11th. All right.
Do you want to take more public comment on it?
No,
Okay. All right.
no, we don't take more public comment until, except for at the beginning. If you have public comment, you're very welcome to email it to me. And Amanda, we did get your email, and the entire committee gets the email that comes into the library building committee, so we have all received that. So thank you. Okay, so we've discussed the schedule for the next phase. Committee liaison reports. Is anybody doing committee liaison? Yes, Penny.
I'll make a friends report, which is the library awarded $4,000 by Florida Savings Bank. That's great.
Thank you.
And then made money, I assume, at town meeting.
Yeah, about 1,100 at town meeting, and then a little bit more than 3,000 at the tax sale. So 4,000 on the weekend.
Wow.
Yeah.
Plus 4,000.
Plus 4,000, that's
Yeah.
$8,000 this weekend. That was a good weekend.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Very nice.
And then, a quick visit, lot 32 report, the restoration of the two altered wetlands will take place on the 22nd of this month, so that is moving forward.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anything else? Any unanticipated business? Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Do I hear a second?
Second. Dalmas,
Roll call?
Antonellis, aye.
Dalmas, aye.
Foster?
Muster, I.
Poole?
Pool, aye.
Jakes?
Aye.
Moss?
I.
Quackenbush? Vallejo, aye. We have adjourned at 8:11. Thank you all for joining us and thank you all for the hard work. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Matt.
Yeah,
Thank you,
thank you.
everybody.
Everybody.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank
We'll see
you.
soon.
Bye.
So we'll see you next Wednesday.
Yep.
Okay. All right, great. Thanks so much. Okay.
Good night.
Good night.